Chapter 8, Crossing the Line. You know, it's not too often that Jesus is wrong. If you crank the God dial all the way down to zero, he was still a fellow who seemed to know the scriptures better than any living Pharisee. He could toss out textual support and prophecy at any moment. Even as a 12-year-old boy, he wowed the crowd in the temple. Even the most jaded Pharisee would admit, he knows his stuff. The disciples must have seen this same ability, yet they all were able to see that God dial on display quite often over those 3 years of ministry. The Word of God would speak things into existence. These fellas saw him talk the talk and also then walk the walk. Yet he did come down to earth in human form, so I guess that diminished form must have made the disciples complacent about this divinity from time to time. Looking back on their time with Christ, they finally saw the big picture. They trusted, they believed. Now, thousands of years later, we have the perspective of Jesus being perfect. He was the unblemished lamb that died without sin. He was the infallible Son of God as part of the Holy Trinity. But by the time he got to Easter week, Jesus was pretty tired, which explains his mistake. Not buying it. Jesus doesn't make mistakes, right? So in a contest between scholars and Jesus, you should always side with Jesus. Good. We've established that. Now that we're all on the same page, it's time to bring up something strange and quite subtle that Jesus said. Matthew, Mark, and Luke all record a very detailed end times conversation that began with Jesus talking about the destruction of the temple and earth, and then later that night, either James, John, Peter, or Andrew asked him, "When will these things be?" And Jesus goes on to drop a ton of prophecy on them. John never bothered to write this moment into his gospel since he'd already written the book of Revelation and included the apostasy, the red horse, the pale horse, the fifth seal, the first seal, the sixth seal, as well as talk about the Antichrist. He goes into great detail about the signs of the final countdown. A quick reference to some of the current generation not dying until this happens. And when it does happen, it'll be pretty quick. But hey, don't worry about you four. You've got a whole planet that needs evangelizing first. It was a pretty heavy moment for those four disciples, and also for most Christians. Just like Daniel, one of these four disciples wanted to know when it would happen. It's complicated, apparently. Yet, when explaining himself and the triggers that will signal the end times and that final countdown, Jesus brings up a fulfilled prophecy. Hold on. A fulfilled prophecy? If a prophecy has been fulfilled, then how is it a prophecy? Now remember, folks, Jesus isn't wrong. Our interpretation, or their interpretation, was wrong. Now, what am I talking about? Okay, here is Mark's account of the moment. Mark 13:9 reads, "Be on your guard. You will be handed over to the councils and beaten in the synagogues. On my account, you will stand before governors and kings as witnesses to them. And the gospel must first be proclaimed to all the nations. But when they arrest you and hand you over, do not worry beforehand what to say. Instead, speak whatever you are given at the time, and it will not be you speaking, but the Holy Spirit. Brother will betray brother to death, and a father his child. Children will rise against their parents and have them put to death. You will be hated by everyone on account of my name. But the one who perseveres to the end will be saved. So when you see the abomination of desolation standing where it ought not be, let the reader understand. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let no one on the housetop go back inside to retrieve anything from his house, and let no one in the field return for his cloak. How miserable those days will be for pregnant and nursing mothers. Pray that it will not occur in the winter, for in those days there will be tribulation, unmatched, from the beginning of God's creation until now, and never to be seen again. If the Lord had not shortened those days, nobody would be saved. But for the sake of the elect, whom he has chosen, he has shortened them. And that time, if anyone says to you, look, here is the Christ, or there he is, do not believe it. For false Christs and false prophets will appear and perform signs and wonders that would deceive even the elect, if that were possible. So be on your guard. I have told you everything in advance. Again, the question was asked, when is this stuff going to happen? Jesus casually previews 2,000 years of Christianity spreading to the nations as the first condition of his return. He then gives some very, it'll be bad, characterizations before dropping a super specific clue. The abomination of desolation. No, hold on. We've heard that phrase before, haven't we? Oh yeah, Daniel also mentioned it. After Daniel nailed the prophecy about Alexander the Great showing up, folks flipped to the next prophecy for insight. Sure enough, after Alexander died, his entire empire broke into 4 lesser kingdoms, and from one of those kingdoms, a villain known as Antiochus Epiphanes showed up to torment the Jews. Jesus called it. And Jesus called out this interpretation as being wrong. Now, he even had this dramatic aside comment, let the reader understand. Being a super scholar, Jesus knew the Pharisees were wrong about a bunch of stuff. So when he's explaining the end times to his 4 guys, he brings up the abomination of desolation prophecy not as being a prophecy about Antiochus Epiphanes, but as a prophecy that will signal the end times arrival. Once again, so when you see the abomination of desolation standing, blah, 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 that's our clue, folks. Hey, John, are you awake? Guess what? Jesus just gave us the clue about when the end times will start the final countdown. Let the reader understand. In a nutshell, Jews looked back at a great conflict between the Maccabees and the Assyrian king known as Antiochus Epiphanes and felt that he fulfilled Daniel's prophecy, which he did. But there were several prophecies. Remember Nebuchadnezzar's Frankenstein monster? Antiochus Epiphanes likely was part of that metal monster. Remember Daniel's vision about the 4 coming beasts? Antiochus Epiphanes likely was the bear with 3 ribs in his mouth. And the goat prophecy? Antiochus Epiphanes was almost certainly the little horn. The dude was evil. Heck, I'm writing this whole chapter about how he's one of the Antichrist heads. So he lit up that spiritual radar back in the day. But in the goat prophecy, there is a phrase that gets used 3 times in the book of Daniel. Here's the first, Daniel 8, verse 9. And out of one of them came forth a little horn, which waxed exceedingly great, toward the south, toward the east, and toward the pleasant land. And it waxed great even to the host of heaven. It cast down some of the host and of the stars to the ground, and stamped upon them. Yea, he magnified himself even to the prince of the host, and by him the daily sacrifice was taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. And a host was given him against the daily sacrifice by reason of transgression. and it cast down the truth to the ground, and it practiced and prospered. Then I heard one saint speaking, and another saint saying unto the certain saint which spoke, How long shall be the vision concerning the daily sacrifice and the transgression of desolation, to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden under foot? And he said unto me, Unto 2,300 days, and then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. Well, we'll break down the details in this passage in a bit, but I'm cool with it matching up with the real Antiochus Epiphanes. Daily sacrifice? Yup. Desolation? Yup. But hold those thoughts. Notice the question asked here. How long shall we, the Jews, be affected by this loser? The answer is 2,300 days. When Antiochus goes to war with the Maccabees Jews, this is the length of time. It works. Happy Hanukkah. Unfortunately, there are two other passages that bring up the abomination of desolation phrase. So here's the second. Daniel 11:30. For the ships of Chittim shall come against him, therefore he shall be grieved and return and have indignation against the holy covenant. So shall he do. He shall even return and have intelligence with him that forsake the holy covenant. And arms shall stand on his part. They shall pollute the sanctuary of strength, and shall take away the daily sacrifice, and shall place the abomination that makes desolate. And such as do wickedly against the covenant shall he corrupt by flatteries. But the people that do know their God shall be strong and do exploits. And they that understand among the people shall instruct many. Yet they shall fall by the sword, and by flame, by captivity, and by spoil many days. And now when they fall, they shall be helped with a little help. And many shall cleave to them with flatteries, and some of them of understanding shall fall, to try them, and to purge, and to make them white, even unto the time of the end. Because it is yet for the time appointed. And the king shall do according to his will, and he shall exalt himself and magnify himself above every god, and shall speak marvelous things against the God of gods. It shall prosper till the indignation be accomplished. For that determined shall be. Neither shall regard the God of his fathers, nor the desire of woman, nor regard any god. For he shall magnify himself above all. But in his estate shall he honor the God of forces. And the God whom his fathers knew shall not be whole honor with gold and silver and precious stones and pleasant things. Thus shall he do in the most strongholds with a strange God, whom he shall acknowledge and increase with glory. And he shall cause them to rule over many, and shall divide the land for gain. Oh boy, old King James. Well, this one might be Antiochus. It could be. But it also could be more of the final battle described in the end times. Yet it does bring up our two phrases, sacrifice and abomination. Now, here's the third one, which is found in Daniel chapter 12, verse 8. And I heard, but I understood not. Then said I, O Lord, what shall be the end of these things? And he said unto me, Go thy way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed until the time of the end. Many shall be purified and made white and tried. But the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand. But the wise shall understand. And from the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, and the abomination that maketh desolation set up, there shall be 1,290 days. Blessed is he that waiteth and cometh to the 1,335 days. But go thou thy way till the end be, for thou shalt rest, and stand in thy lot at the end of the days. Now this passage is fun. Daniel asks a bold question, different than his earlier question. This time, he clears his throat and asks about the end times. Not what's next, not who's next, not how long we have left. He jumps to the end times and wants to know the clue that will identify the beginning of the end times. His answer? The daily sacrifice will stop, and the abomination of desolation is set up. When that happens, you have approximately 1,290 days. Dang, that's 3.5 years. Got it? Now, let's get back to Jesus. When one of the 4 disciples asks Jesus about the end times, Jesus brings up the abomination of desolation. Why? It's a trigger. When the abomination of desolation appears, the final days have arrived. Tick, 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 boom. I mean, Jesus knows this is a complicated prophecy because he says it is. Let the reader understand. Yet, when you look at the Daniel 12 prophecy, it states that the end times will come 1,290 days after 1. The daily sacrifice is ended, or 2, the abomination of desolation goes, wah! The world did not end after Antiochus Epiphanes destroyed the temple and set up his own altar. What does this mean? It's still an unfulfilled prophecy. The Pharisees, the scholars, were and are wrong about this being entirely about Antiochus Epiphanes. I mean, yes, Antiochus did some bad stuff. Really bad stuff. Yes, he messed with the temple. But according to Jesus, this is the prophecy that will signal the end times. So we need new definitions for our wrong interpretations of the daily sacrifice and the abomination of desolation. If we're looking for the wrong things, we'll never notice the end times have arrived. The historical Antiochus Epiphanes. Okay, now that I've made that long-winded point, let's meet our guy. We know quite a bit about this guy since he was born during the era of historians. Now, I'm paraphrasing a summary, so if you want the gritty details, go read it. Following the death of Alexander the Great, his empire was given to his 4 generals. Ptolemy, who ruled Egypt, Cassander, who ruled Old Macedon, otherwise known as Greece, Antigonus, quite the name, who ruled what's known as Turkey today, and Seleucus, who ruled Assyria and the West. That's how it started. And 2 centuries later, Antiochus Epiphanes IV finds himself in charge of the Seleucid Empire. Yet, even his birth has villainous tones. First, he was born with the name Mithridates. He took the name Antiochus Epiphanes later in life, which means God manifest. Yep, that's a big ego. Check. Back in those days, folks played around with the syllables and turned his name into a phrase that meant the mad one. That's telling. Yet, Mithridates? You see, that is a very complicated name. Today, historians claim Mithraism is a mystery religion versus a public religion, which is proven by the secret caves and underground shrines centered around Rome. The Roman version of this mystery religion is often credited with the rites and levels of one of the first secret societies. Yet the origins of the religion have connections to Zoroastrianism. Remember Zoroaster? Yep. I last mentioned him when I talked about the religious origins of Nimrod, head number 2. You see, just like Zoroaster, Mithras came from Persia, otherwise known as Iran. According to archaeologists, there is a common theme of bull slaying. And when did I mention bulls the last time? Oh yes, that's Baal's symbol. Remember, see the golden calf? So Mithras is checking off a lot of boxes, isn't it? Mithras tradition holds that he was born from a rock in most origin stories, yet he also has connections to a water god. Beast from earth, beast from water. His visual iconography is a fun mixture of images. Part man, part serpent tail, lion head, wings while holding a caduceus, with connections to Hermes and Mercury. Oh, and a fun coincidence, or not, Mithridates was born on December 25th. Oh boy, does this detail send scoffers and scholars into a tizzy. Me? I'm not afraid of this fact. In my Examining Christmas study, I wrote a whole chapter on the support for Jesus being born on approximately December 25th. But just because two figures had the same birthday doesn't mean you can throw the baby out with the bathwater. Probably a bad metaphor to use there, never mind. Instead of taking away from Jesus, I think this one is adding to the evil mystique of our villain. We'll get back to the importance of this birthday in a bit. So after being born in 215 BC, little Mithridates officially became the king of the Seleucid kingdom at the age of 40 as Antiochus Epiphanes IV. He died in 164 BC. Anyways, early in his life, he was kept a political prisoner in Rome. Even though he was technically mad and saw himself as a god, historians record that he liked to hang out with the commoners. Okay. While his empire wasn't massive, he did stir the pot a bit. Our symbolic bear managed to eat a few ribs once he was in power. In 170 BC, he invaded Egypt, displacing Ptolemy VI, who became a puppet king who ruled from Rome. In 168 BC, he attacked Cyprus. Around this time, he got the attention of Rome, and in a dramatic moment that saw the rise and fall of two empires, the Roman Gaius Laenas literally drew a line in the sand and told Antiochus Epiphanes, enough is enough. So Antiochus Epiphanes stopped messing with Roman allies and instead turned to Israel. As the southern neighbor to Assyria, or the Seleucid Empire, Israel had heard rumors that Antiochus Epiphanes had died in battle and took advantage of this. They deposed the high priest Menelaus and replaced him with their own guy named Jason. Oh boy, Antiochus Epiphanes did not like this. So in 167, Antiochus attacked Israel, restored Menelaus, and executed anybody and everybody associated with this little coup. Historians describe Antiochus Epiphanes as raging like a wild animal, as they massacred 80,000 Jews in 3 days. And Hitler sighs from his room in hell. Now remember, Israel has been part of Alexander's system for 2 centuries now. And Hellenized Jews, which means they grew up being Greek kinda, are now prevalent. Antiochus Epiphanes outlawed traditional rites and promoted the Greek/Roman worship of Zeus. Not publicly a mystery religion, but same, okay? In retaking Jerusalem, women were forced to throw circumcised babies from the walls, and much of the restoration to Jerusalem was destroyed. It was a bad time. Hammer time. The Maccabean revolt of 167 to 160 BC covers the story of a Jewish man named Matthias and his guerrilla war against the enemies of God. For modern Jews, it is a familiar tale that brought an important holiday, Hanukkah. Despite deaths and major setbacks, this guy, known as the Hammer, outlasts Antiochus Epiphanes and helps Israel gain independence in 142 BC. Although the Hasmoneans bring King Herod later. At the center of this, David versus Goliath 2.0, is the Miracle of Lights, where they restore the temple and witness a miraculous loaves and fishes moment involving the oil. Oh, that happened in late December. Apparently, Antiochus Epiphanes wanted to celebrate his birthday on the 25th. You can find that on 2 Maccabees 6:7. And desecrate the temple. How? Well, he decided to insult the Jews by involving a pig, Leviticus 11, ew, and also plant a statue of Zeus. And yada, yada, yada. The Maccabees take the temple back on December 25th and celebrate this cleansing of the temple in the Feast of Dedication. That's 1 Maccabees 4:52, each December. Never heard the story? Well, due to some anti-Semitism and heavy-handed editorialism, most modern Protestant Bibles don't include this section. Why? Martin Luther, when translating Latin into German, noted that they were simply historical books. No prophecies, angels, or God commands within it. So he left it out. Yet it's a cool read. It begins with Alexander the Great's "his heart was lifted up" invasion. It records, battle by battle, details that are kind of boring. It mentions that Spartans have Jewish lineage, brings up that time Rome helped, adds graphic detail about Jeremiah and the hiding of the ark, has graphic scenes of torture and brutality that made it very rated R. Oh, and it furthers my argument about Baal and Anath and their continued worship under new names. So I found it quite interesting. Ultimately, it chronicles how Antiochus Epiphanes departed to deal with a Parthian problem in Armenia. During this battle, Antiochus Epiphanes dies suddenly in 164 BC. Suddenly, it explains how he was divinely killed by worms and ulcers. Gross. No more Antiochus Epiphanes. Following his death, Parthia became a global power and opposes another rising power in Rome. That's the biblical story of Antiochus Epiphanes versus the hammer. Matching the prophecy. At the beginning of this chapter, I theorized how Antiochus Epiphanes mostly matched the Daniel 8 prophecy. Little horn, that's Antiochus Epiphanes. Wax great, well, that's war. Against the south, well, that was Egypt. Against the east, well, that was Parthia. Against the pleasant land, synonymous with Judea. The hosts of heaven, well, we'll get back to that one. To the ground is the raising of Jerusalem. Magnifying himself obviously turned into declaring himself a god. Even to the prince of the host, well, we'll get back to that one too. The daily sacrifice, when AE decorated the temple. The host, the Maccabean revolt. 2,300 days, the revolt lasted 7 years. Broken without hand. Well, that's Antiochus Epiphanes' sudden illness. I mean, that, folks, is a very, very impressive prophecy. Because of the accuracy of predicting Antiochus Epiphanes and his vile genocidal war against the Jews, folks tossed all the prophecies in Daniel and ascribed them to Antiochus Epiphanes. Yet, when Jesus showed up 2 centuries later, he has to correct his disciples that this was an unfulfilled prophecy. So some of the most popular theories about the Antichrist involve him doing the same stuff as Antiochus Epiphanes. To them, the trigger will be temple, pig, Zeus, Jerusalem. Now, I've read fictional accounts of the Antichrist that have him literally riding a pig through the temple in Jerusalem. The problem? There's no temple? So since 1948, when the word Palestine was erased from the map and replaced with Israel, American politicians have been doing all they can to help aid the Jews in rebuilding the temple. Yet to do that, they'll need to rid Israel of all the Muslims who rebuilt their own temple on the foundation of the old temple. Yet I think Jesus purposefully cautioned us and his disciples that the interpretation of this prophecy is a bit off. Remember, he established abomination of desolation and daily sacrifice as the two triggers that would count down the literal days to the end. The world will end in 1,290 days in Daniel 12. Yet, nothing happened. So, what does that mean? Redefining daily sacrifice. You know what they say about assumptions, right? From Judas Maccabeus to Judas Iscariot, most Jews ascribed the prophecies of Daniel to all fit Antiochus Epiphanes. Yet according to the wording, once the daily sacrifice was ended, the world was supposed to come to an end 1,290 days later. But the assumption was that the daily sacrifice was happening in the temple. There are a lot of ifs in this theory. If the abomination of desolation means A, Zeus, or B, pigs, maybe. If the temple is the one built by Solomon, oh wait, that got destroyed. If the temple is the one rebuilt by Nehemiah and company, oh wait, that kind of got destroyed too. If the temple is the one rebuilt by Herod, well, that got destroyed. If the daily sacrifice is the high priest making offerings in the holiest of holies, we've got a problem. The problem? Well, all the temples built in Jerusalem have been torn down at some point. Daily sacrifice by high priests have been stopped on multiple occasions. The Babylonians did it, Antiochus Epiphanes did it, the Romans did it many times. I don't think it has anything to do with Jewish priests or the Temple of Jerusalem. After all, Jesus corrected his guys when he told them that this prophecy was still connected to the end times. So stop expecting a rebuilt temple. Stop picturing an Antichrist figure riding a pig through the temple. I mean, sure, the Antichrist might repeat many of the same things that Antiochus Epiphanes did back in the day, but we might miss it if we're not paying close attention. Let the reader understand. So here's some food for thought. I might not be right, but having an open mind might help us see this major trigger when it does arrive. Antiochus Epiphanes was a proper villain, which I'll explain in a bit. So we might need to expand our definition of how grand the scale of villainy will be. I mean, right on the heels of the sixth seal, which is the global catastrophe, which I think is a meteor strike, that causes widespread death and geographic destruction, the seventh seal sneaks right in. I mean, nothing happens on earth, but look at what is described. So this is Revelation 8:1. When he had opened the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven about half the space of an hour. And I saw the seven angels which stood before God, and to them were given seven trumpets. And another angel came and stood at the altar, having a golden censer, and there was given unto him much incense, that he should offer it with the prayers of all the saints upon the golden altar which was before the throne. And the smoke of the incense, which came with the prayers of the saints, ascended up before God out of the angel's hand. And the angel took the censer and filled it with fire of the altar and cast it into the earth. And there were voices and thunderings and lightnings and an earthquake. Now, where is this taking place? In heaven. What is being described? An altar. Who is there? An angel that's acting like a high priest. And what is this figure doing? Putting incense into a golden censer. And why is he doing this? It's an offering. And how does it end? The offering and the mechanism to do another offering is thrown to earth. So do you see it? This is the real daily sacrifice. The seventh seal is one of the triggers. Right after the great day of tribulation, the Antichrist shows up. Start the clock. He shows up on earth while up in heaven, the daily sacrifice ends. That's when Daniel's clock can really start. Daily sacrifice on earth has been stopped by Satan and company many times. Yet in this temple, in heaven, the mysterious high priest angel continues to make an offering. At the end of the routine, he tosses the golden censer to earth, which means that for the next 1,290 days, there will be no sacrifices made in heaven. That's what Daniel is talking about. I'd even offer speculation about this mysterious priest. Check out Melchizedek. Don't let poor interpretations of Genesis 14 fool you. Melchizedek was not some local dude. He was heaven's high priest who came down to bless and sanctify Abraham with the Holy Eucharist. That's priestly stuff. Abraham seemed to understand and offer tithes. Still not buying it? You don't want Melchizedek to be this significant? Well, check out Hebrews 7:1. For this Melchizedek, king of Salem, priest of the Most High God, who met Abraham returning from the slaughter of the kings and blessed him, to whom also Abraham gave a tenth part of all, first being by interpretation king of righteousness, and after that also king of Salem, which is king of peace, without father, without mother, without descent, having neither beginning of days nor end of life, but made like unto the Son of God, abideth a priest continually. Priest of the Most High God, King of peace and righteousness, divinely made, because without father or without mother, how else were you made? Not human, likely, but it says without descent. He's some sort of immortal when it says nor end of life, and there's more immortal stuff when it says no beginning and no end. Divinely made, and then it compares him to the Son of God, and it says continually he'll be a high priest, which is where I'm getting the daily sacrifice concept. So my theory is that Melchizedek hangs out in the temple of heaven, makes his daily sacrifice, pops down to earth on occasion like he did with Abraham and others, maybe Jacob, I don't know. And following the sixth seal, this eternal priest stops the daily sacrifice and triggers the end times and the cosmic showdown. The only reason we get all that information dropped about Melchizedek is that Jesus is going to replace this guy as our righteous high priest. Jesus gave himself as a sacrifice long ago. And once Melchizedek tosses his golden censer to earth, it signals how Jesus will sit on earth with us rather than needing a heavenly daily sacrifice. I mean, how cool is that? Or I suppose you could let it be a pig. An image of the beast. If our interpretation of daily sacrifice is a bit off, then perhaps our interpretation of abomination of desolation is also a bit off. Again, the historical accounts of Antiochus Epiphanes lean toward the offense being swine-related or including a shrine to Zeus. Okay. In the grand scheme of things, the pig seems silly And the shrine seems to already be happening, with the Temple Mount being a much more extreme version of an old statue. Well, while the old school definition seems to be a thing, what if the abomination of desolation is a person? Is there support for this theory? Well, both Matthew and Mark's translation use modern English words that become personification when it mentions the abomination of desolation standing where it should not be. Standing? Standing. So a person, the Antichrist, will stand where it should not be. If it's not in a rebuilt temple, then where else could the Antichrist be standing? Why is it an abomination? The Antichrist stands in Jerusalem, which is a holy place. The Antichrist of the seven stands upon the earth. My theory is that the Antichrist is a genetic Frankenstein of sorts. Like Nebuchadnezzar's nightmare, this figure will be engineered and made up of the 7 worst villains in human history. Is there revelation support for this? Sure is. The prophet, and we'll get to him much later, decides that they should make an image to the beast which had the wound by a sword and did live. An image? I mean, the simplest way to picture this would be a statue, yawn. Yet making an image of something with genetics is cloning. In that same Revelation 13:14 verse, it establishes that the previous image died, dead, killed. While there certainly could be a bit of resurrection, the more impressive feat would be to clone someone who's been dead for centuries and bring them back to life, Jurassic Park style. I mean, that's science, folks. Okay. Yet, while the DNA lives again, the true measure of scientific immortality would be bringing back the person's soul and returning it to the body. If you could rebuild a body and then also bring back consciousness, that'd be super impressive. So let's look at what Revelation 13:15 says. He had the power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the beast, image of the beast, should be killed. Give life? Yep, the prophet somehow brings back the speaking part of a clone. This isn't some statue with a walkie-talkie built in. I mean, this act will make people marvel, not chuckle. This act ends the need to fear God. Why? Clone a person and bring back their soul. Done. So the abomination of desolation might simply mean that the prophet alakazams the consciousness of the 7 into this genetically engineered body. Once the clone breathes life and speaks, the clock starts, since it's an abomination. It's an epic theory, huh? Well, I'd also like to explore another option that could go along with my clone theory. In 1 Maccabees 1:43, which describes Antiochus Epiphanes, it says, "Yea, many also of the Israelites consented to his religion, and sacrificed unto idols, and profaned the Sabbath." I'm not backtracking. Antiochus Epiphanes did the pig Zeus profaning, but notice that Antiochus Epiphanes had a specific religion. So I did a little reading, and the footnote said Baal Shaman was his religion. Remember that term abomination of desolation comes from the phrase Shakuk shaman, which translates as Baal of heaven, oh boy, or Baal Shamayim. While idolatrous worship is bad, and so is anything that maketh desolation, there seems to be a direct line involving the religions of these Antichrist figures. Nimrod and Semiramis equals Baal and Anath. Ramses the Great equals daughter named Anath. Nimrod worships the head. Lamech is likely the head. Alexander restores Nimrod's worship of the head. Nimrod has roots to Zoroaster. Antiochus Epiphanes' symbolism is Zoroaster. Round and round it goes. So let's just speculate that Antiochus Epiphanes' religion was a legitimate thread. What would it cause him to do if it's old enough to go all the way back to Lamech? Dark sentences. I saved the best for last, I hope. Both Antiochus Epiphanes' life and death had a touch of the supernatural. Quite obviously, he is a linchpin of prophecy with 3 different prophecies from Daniel describing the abomination of desolation as well as the daily sacrifice. While Daniel 12 seems to be specifically given for the end times, and Daniel 11 being so vaguely written that it could be both BC and AD, I'm not sure about that one. The passage found in Daniel 8 also hits on all 3 concepts, yet seems to specifically target the monster born as Mithridates. Why the 3 passages? Well, I think Antiochus Epiphanes is the game plan for the coming Antichrist. See what I did there? Both will involve 2 end-time countdowns. Both will begin as a little horn before claiming power. Both will persecute the good guys. Both will blaspheme the God of heaven. Both will use false peace to achieve their aims. Both will mock and or violate the sanctity of worship. Both will have connections to a dark religion and or figure. Both will die through divine retribution. Both will conclude with divine deliverance. So there is a lot that can be learned while studying this little horn known as Antiochus Epiphanes. While all the stuff above are widely known about Antiochus Epiphanes, there are some very curious phrases that make it seem like this guy was way more of a threat than the silly pig Zeus incident. Ponder this. How could a villain destroy the earth? Dr. Evil came up with his laser plan. Thanos collected the Infinity Stones. Henry Ford invented combustion engines to create global warming and to melt the Earth's polar caps. Darn corporate news. Anyway, sorry about that one. All teasing aside, I think I see a plan devised by Antiochus Epiphanes. Now, not having been around, I'm not really sure how any of it worked, but the text seems to imply he had a very audacious plan, attacking heaven. Remember, he's not the first to attempt this. Head number 2, Nimrod, built a tower, not just as a flood insurance policy, but also to avenge himself on God. Remember that? Had the passive-aggressive language reset button not been hit, he likely would have followed through with his plan. Learning from the mistakes of his predecessors, Antiochus Epiphanes likely dedicated his black heart to the study of the black arts. Unlike Nimrod, who wanted to war against God himself, Antiochus Epiphanes had a very subtle plan. As soon as Daniel put his chapter 12 to paper, the prophecy for the end times was cemented. Having an understanding mind, see what I did there, Antiochus Epiphanes knew he had to do more than sack the temple. He knew if he could stop the daily sacrifice, he'd start the clock. So what if he abducted or killed the heavenly high priest Melchizedek? Brash, I know, but think of the effect. Just like the clock begins between seal number 6 and seal number 7, if something happened to the high priest, that clock would start early, before Christ's redemption of humanity, causing the world to end without salvation. That is a diabolical plan. So with that concept in mind, I'm going to drop the passage again with my interpretations inserted to show you a possible translation. So turn to Daniel 8, verse 9. And out of one of them came forth a little horn, Antiochus Epiphanes, which waxed exceedingly great toward the south, Egypt, toward the east, Parthia, and toward the pleasant land, Israel. And when it waxed great, even to the host of heaven, angels in company, and it cast down some of the host and of the stars to the ground. Holy cow, did Antiochus Epiphanes defeat angels? And stamping on them, how did he defeat them? Yea, he magnified himself even to the prince of the host. Who was that? Michael, Satan, pre-incarnate Jesus? And by him the daily sacrifice was taken away, but not ended, transferred, hidden, taken from Jerusalem to heaven. And the place of his sanctuary was cast down, the Jerusalem temple. And a host was given to him against the daily sacrifice by reason of transgression. So does that mean dark allies were given to him, fallen angels, demons? And it cast down the truth to the ground, and it practiced, and it prospered. So Antiochus Epiphanes was winning. Then I heard one saint speaking, and another said unto another certain saint which spake, How long shall the vision concerning the daily sacrifice and the transgression of desolation, to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden under foot? Some of the prophets or angels were getting nervous. And he said unto me, Unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. Literally, the Maccabean War prophecy. Wow. A bit later, Gabriel adds a little bit more to the prophecy with some exclamations. So we're at 8:23. And in the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgressors are come to the full, a king of fierce countenance and understanding dark sentences shall stand up. Does dark sentences equal black magic? How does Antiochus Epiphanes wage war against heaven? And his power shall be mighty, but not by his own power. And he shall destroy wonderfully, and shall prosper and practice, and shall destroy the mighty, the Gabor, and the holy people. Historically, Antiochus Epiphanes was minor. Spiritually, he might have been the greatest threat. No Jews equals no Jesus, no prophecy, no salvation. And through his policy also he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand, and he shall magnify himself in his heart, and by peace shall destroy many. And he shall also stand up against the prince of princes, but he shall be broken without hand. The prince of princes? The prince of the host? All right, so let's dive into that last phrase. The prince of princes could mean a few different things. Remember, Melchizedek is introduced with the title Prince of Peace and Prince of Righteousness, so he is a candidate to be either this Prince of Princes or even the Prince of the Host, or none of the above. Obviously, Jesus is another idea that popped into my head. This would mean a literal war on heaven since Jesus exists but hasn't come down to earth in bodily form yet. The third option is that this is referencing Michael the archangel. Again, Antiochus Epiphanes wages war but fails. With his dark allies, Antiochus Epiphanes makes this last for numerous years. While he is trying to wipe out the Jews on earth, he is also attacking the host of heaven and preventing them from answering the prayers of the oppressed Jews. There is a bit of support for this. Daniel 10:13 gives us this scene. But the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days. But lo, Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, and I remained there with the king of Persia. Huh? So apparently angels are active in the current events of mankind, and in this case, Michael had to go help one of his angel buddies who was having a tough time of it. Antiochus targets angels. The fourth option is a little bit more audacious. Satan. Look at how Paul describes Satan in his letter to the Ephesians. This is Ephesians 2:2. Wherein in times past ye walked according to the course of this world, according to the prince of the power of the air, the spirit that now worketh in the children of disobedience. Now, there is a ton of implied language about Satan having been an angel who also waged war against the host of heaven and fell to earth. For example, here's Isaiah 14:12. How you have fallen from heaven, O star of the morning, son of the dawn. You have been cut down to the earth. You have been weakened by the nations. But you said in your heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will raise my throne above the stars of God. My point, as Jesus pointed out in his house divided sermon, Team Satan and Team Beelzebub might not be on the same page. Leave it to the sons of perdition to try to bring about death and destruction. Satan, well, he likely wants to prolong his own life as long as he can. Satan might want to delay his punishment, but unlike Antiochus Epiphanes, he doesn't want the world to end. It's just a theory. This war in heaven concept is not just my wild imagination. Jesus makes a very, very strange reference to it also. Check out Matthew 11, verse 12. And from the days of John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven suffers violence, and the violent take it by force. For all the prophets and the law prophesied unto John. And if he will receive it, this is Elijah, which was for to come. He that hath ears to hear, let him hear. Oh, there Jesus goes again in verse 15. This one is a hard one to understand. LOL. At first, it seems as if Jesus is saying, from now until now, the kingdom of heaven suffers violence. After all, John the Baptist was a peer. That's a very, very small window for a war in heaven. Wait. In verse 14, Jesus changes this equation. He throws out some algebra when he says, this equals Elijah, which translates as John the Baptist equals Elijah. Now, remember that Elijah lived around 900 BC. John lived in minus 0.5 BC. If John equals John, then it's a pretty short and insignificant war. If John equals Elijah, then Jesus is saying that the kingdom of heaven has suffered much violence over the past several centuries. That, folks, matches up with the Antiochus Epiphanes theory. Dark sentences indeed. So there you have it. That's my speculation on the 7 heads. Let's refresh. And here is the mind that hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth. And there are 7 kings. 5 are fallen, and 1 is, and the other is not yet come. And when he cometh, he must continue a short space. And the beast that was, and is not, even he is the 8th, and is of the 7, and goeth to perdition. The 5 that have fallen, folks: number 1, Lamech. Number 2, Nimrod. Number 3, Ramses the Great. Number 4, Alexander the Great, the lion. Number 5, Antiochus Epiphanes, the bear. And the one king who was alive when John received the prophecy. Who's the leper? Let's meet Emperor Domitian.